right. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see so many of you joining us on time. Welcome to this PEOF Plus Rare, this first ever PEOF Plus Rare session on living with the unknown, alleviating diagnostic odysseys in rare diseases with learnings from the systemic mastocytosis community and beyond. I'm very pleased to welcome you today to this virtual session. To begin with, just a quick reminder on how we run these sessions. It's a collaborative and safe space that we aim to have here. So please be present and engaged. At the same time, when you're not speaking and during the panel conversation, please have your microphones in mute so that there are no unnecessary disturbances. You will be able to access the chat of this Zoom room, and there you can provide your questions, comments, and feedback as well. And if you have questions for the speakers, then you will be able to post them in the chat, and we'll make sure to assess and give them over to the panelists. This session is recorded, and we will use this recording for note-taking purposes, of course, but it will also be made available. This is also in the spirit of the Patient Engagement Open Forum, an interactive session. So towards the second half of this meeting, we will have space for a workshop where we can all engage and collaborate together, and we'll make also use of digital tools to make that easier. More on that later. Additionally, this webinar is hosted in English, and if you need a live translation, you will be able to find that option in Zoom as well. Here, a quick overview of how that works. We're using Wordly, and you can, through the app function on the bottom of the menu bar of Zoom, enable this function. A few words on the Patient Engagement Open Forum and the Patient Engagement Open Forum Plus. For those of you who join us the first time today, PEOF is the only multi-stakeholder event that focuses on shaping the future of patient engagement across disease areas, across technologies, and always co-led by the patient community. This is part of a virtual series and annual in-person events as well. And we're also pleased, of course, to announce the co-organizers with the Patient-Focused Medicines Development Initiative, U-Party, and the European Patients Forum as the owners of this initiative. As I mentioned before, this is a collaborative and safe space, and you can see on the right-hand side the principles for the Patient Engagement Open Forum. It's a global space and a patient-centric space. We want to focus on co-creation and really drive meaningful and systemic patient engagement together. We're here also in a non-competitive space, which means we don't promote any particular products or companies or similar. At the same time, we're really encouraging you to be disrupting and innovating, and we come together here to really address uncomfortable topics in a safe place and defragment the global ecosystem around patient engagement and leverage that to drive it further. The Patient Engagement Open Forum Plus is a new community initiative that focuses on building community-led movements. So it is designed to magnify the Patient Engagement Open Forum's global impact and empower different communities, different geographies to really take up the spirit of PEOF independently and make and leverage the global ecosystem to connect and drive topics that are relevant for that specific community. This is our first PEOF Plus Rare session, and this particular forum under the PEOF Plus umbrella has been brought to life to really amplify what different rare disease communities are already leading. We want to enable with this a recognition of the leadership of rare disease communities within patient engagement. We want to provide this shared platform and a forum for co-creation. enable learning, sharing, and interaction across stakeholder groups, and of course, foster shared identity, connection, and with that visibility across independent initiatives and make the most of being stronger together rather than alone. Our co-host for today's session is the From Testing to Targeted Treatments Initiative, or FT3, a global patient co-led multi-stakeholder program aiming to improve patient access to the right treatment at the right time. And I am here as a representative of that program. My name is Vincent Raske. I'm an associate program director at FT3, and I'm very pleased to host this webinar today on behalf of FT3 members and the speakers that I will introduce very shortly. If you're interested in learning more about the Patient Engagement Open Forum in general, PEOF Plus, or the From Testing to Targeted Treatments program, don't hesitate to reach out. Use the chat to ask questions, and the team and myself will be happy to answer all of your inquiries. This is our first of 3 planned PEOF Plus Rare virtual sessions this year, and we will set the scene for other conversations that dive deeper and beyond the diagnostic Odyssey, looking at the time of diagnosis and how patients and care providers can interact together to make the best out of a diagnosis, and later on as well of the care pathway and care journey that comes after being diagnosed, especially around shared decision making. So stay tuned for additional sessions, and let's get started with today's session. I am in the process of welcoming you all and doing the introductions. We will have a panel conversations on living with the unknown with our speakers, and we will then move into the breakout groups where we co-create and brainstorm opportunities to alleviate the diagnostic odyssey that so many rare disease patients have to endure. And then finally, we will have a short wrap up and look at the next steps, so that you can rest assured that this conversation will not stay today in this Zoom room, but it will be taken further and picked up. That being said, and without further ado, I have the pleasure of being joined by Jess Hobart, the chair of the UK Mastocytosis Support Group, by Polina Piatilova, a dermatologist and researcher at the Charité in Berlin, by Christian Perez, head of international patient affairs from Blueprint Medicines, a Sanofi company, and by Doreen Wong Riga, the president of the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, who will moderate this session today. And with that, Doreen, I'm happy to see you, and I will hand it over to you to get us started.
Well, thank you so very, very much. This is very, very exciting for me because, I've been involved with PEOF and also with the work that we've been doing in terms of precision medicine with FT3. So bringing together rare diseases and precision medicines is something that we really see as a natural occurrence. But also, as hopefully all of you know, this is, I guess we call it now Rare Disease Week, or maybe Rare Disease Month. There is a Rare Disease Day, which this year will be on Saturday, February the 28th, since we only have an official Rare Disease Day once every 4 years on February 29th. But I'm just delighted to be here. Some of you may know I am president and CEO of the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, where I have been leading our organization for about some 25 years. Some of you will know I also have 2 children who were born with rare conditions. I also serve as president of the Asia Pacific Alliance of Rare Disease Organizations, which is now just celebrated 10 years. So we're very excited in terms of the progress that's being made. But I'm truly delighted to be here, past chair of Rare Disease International, with the international collaboration that we've got on this panel. So I'm going to start. Vincent already introduced the names of the persons that are going to be here, but maybe I'll ask each of them to do maybe just a quick thumbnail of their perspective in terms of rare disease. We are centering this conversation around one single condition, systemic mastocytosis. But I think as we're talking, and even though every one of the persons on the panel has a real personal or professional relationship with the condition, we are talking about it as a, I won't say just as a representative, but I think you will see, and those of you who are involved with rare diseases or living with a rare disease will find that it really has huge resonance with your own journeys, with your own experience. So we're not just talking about this disease, but we are talking about how this disease exemplifies for us kind of the challenges, as Vincent says, certainly with the diagnostic odyssey, but way beyond that, and also what we're doing. So not just raising the challenges, but how we are collectively as a community addressing rare diseases. And I will have to say is that, since I've been involved in this for probably about 25, 30 years, we have never been in a better position to address rare diseases. So that's the very good news. That also being said, we're a long ways from actually being able to solve either the odyssey in terms of diagnosis or the access to care and treatments, but it's great. So maybe I'll start. Jess, I think I'll ask you, if you don't mind, to open up and to give us just a thumbnail, and then we'll go into talking about the issues at three levels: the individual level, at the care coordination level, and very importantly, at an ecosystem level. But over to you, Jess.
Great. Hi, everyone. I am Jess Hobart. I am the chair of the UK Mastocytosis Support Group. As you can hear from my accent, I didn't originate in the UK, and I was also involved in the US charity when I was still living there. I have been a patient, or sometimes I call myself an impatient, with mastocytosis since I was in my early 20s, which means I've been at this for more than 35 years. And I, my own path was probably easier than some other people's, but there are certainly examples from that I'm looking forward to sharing about my own experience and also what I see in the community. My background is also in public health and in public policy, and so I'm looking forward to the sort of broadening of the conversation as well.
Brilliant. And we are going to ask Jess to talk on all of those levels because she brings in both a professional and a personal perspective into this. So, Paulina, over to you.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, and also welcome to the webinar. I'm personally today very happy to have this conversation and to exchange. And I love this new kind of formats where we can really, I think, come together to find a new solution. So as already mentioned, I'm a physician, so I present a dermatologist, and my way already started more than 10 years, and I see patients with mastocytosis for a while. And firstly, it was told as it's only a skin disorder. So, and then I started reading about this, and then we identified so many different phases of the disease. And nowadays, so after I would say more than 10 years, I still can say it continues to be challenging, and you see that we try to come to with new solutions, but you see how really heterogeneous disorder is, that the challenges which the patients had, what I have seen before, that we also see even more challenges nowadays. And we need to work with many physicians from other specialties. We also need to support our patients. We try to adopt the language to the patients to better understand each other. So there are many things we can do, and I think we will try also to come with good solutions today, how we can help each other to be more I would say more easy for each other to understand each other. So how physician talks to the patient, how the patient talks to the physician, and also how we can improve their diagnostics and support our patients.
Sorry, thank you so much, Belinda. You've already touched on, I think, what will be a really important aspect of what we're talking about, and that is the relationship between the patient and the clinician. And we know that the clinician does so much more than just looking at the clinical aspects of the disease, but we also know that relationship is really important to unraveling the challenges and moving forward. So Christian, who is going to talk to us from an innovative perspective, Christian reminds me that we've known each other for many years in terms of his work in some previous initiatives and innovations on treating rare disease. So delighted to have you here and really delighted in the role that you have right now with what would be a small innovative company, but we'll talk a little bit more about where it's going and how it's actually working to bring innovation to patients.
Thank you very much, Ilhan, for the introduction. I have to say that I'm very happy of having this conversation today in the context of International Rare Disease Day. I think this is the right context for having this conversation and this collective knowledge sharing. So as Vincent introduced me, my name is Christian Perez. I'm head of international patient affairs at Blueprint Medicines, a Sanofi company. I'm originally from Argentina, but I live in Spain now. And I've been working in patient affairs for over a decade. And I have to say that this is my first biotech experience. I work with big pharmaceutical companies, and this is my first biotech experience. And it has literally changed my personal and professional journey. When I joined Blueprint about 3 years ago, one of the first things I learned was about urgency to treat, urgency to understand, and urgency to support. So the sense of urgency is critical. And we've been working over the last years on three main areas. The first one is about developing knowledge and evidence about the disease, about the patient experience, about the challenges, really having like a deep understanding on what are the highest unmet need and how the company and how other stakeholders can develop solutions to overcome those challenges along the patient pathway. The second area of focus is about raising awareness. As every rare disease, there's limited recognition, limited understanding, and there's a huge need on helping different stakeholders understand what the disease is about, what's the origin, where this disease is coming from, especially in like a diseases with like a genetic component, and also help me understand that now there could be potentially solutions that are available for doctors or for patients that can be used to improve or to reduce the symptom burden. And the third focus was about community building and supporting community building. And this is for me one of the most exciting pieces of my work is about bringing people together, facilitate knowledge sharing, co-create solution. Because one of my biggest learning from these 3 years at Blueprint was that it takes a village to support people living with rare diseases. Individual efforts help, like patient community supporting patients, medical community developing the science and supporting patient care, industry researching and developing potential solution for people in need. But when we come together as a community, we can have really the potential to transform, to change system conditions, and to make a significant change for people who are living with rare diseases, like in our case, systemic mastocytosis.
Thanks a lot, Christian. You've already presaged, I think, all the levels that we're going to, which is great. Let's come back then. And, we're using, it's not just as an example, but I think if we were to choose an example of a challenging rare condition, mastocytosis, it really does fit really into that. But Jess, your personal journey has been, I think, really a challenge as well. And maybe you can talk a little about in terms of your journey, the misdiagnosis you've had, also the impact, not just, clinically, physically, but also the psychological, mental health impacts that you've experienced at an individual level. I think exemplifies what a lot of patients and families go through.
Absolutely. So in my case, I sort of think I was lucky. Um, and serendipity is something that comes up in lots of these stories that people tell about how they got diagnosed. But I was an allergic kid. I had asthma. I had allergy shots for everything that was green. In my environment, I was allergic to animals, and so I was used to being at the allergist. But all of a sudden, in my late teens, I started having some symptoms, like acidic stomach symptoms. And then I went away for a term abroad when I was in university. And all of a sudden, I got spots on my skin. And I wrote home to my mom and said, "Can you make me an appointment with the dermatologist? I don't know what this is." Um, and the dermatologist whom I saw, luckily, had recently read about mastocytosis. She just had come across an article. And so it was in the front of her mind. And she said, "Well, do you have allergies?" And I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Do you have stomach aches?" I said, "Yes." "Do you have headaches?" "Well, no, I don't really have that." And she said, "I think I know what you have. I haven't seen it before." And she did a biopsy. And I went off to my summer job as a camp counselor, in charge of the waterfront at a children's summer camp. And she wrote me a letter after the biopsy results came back and said, "Well, I think you have this thing is urticaria pigmentosa, and I want you to have a full blood count." And so I went to a nearby hospital where I was and had a full blood count, and that was normal. And that was it. She didn't tell me anything else. And I, at age 19, didn't really know to ask. Um, and my parents weren't experienced with ill health at all. And so they hadn't learned any kind of advocacy skills and didn't really know to be concerned either. And it took until I had finished university and moved to Boston, um, and a GP whom I saw looked at the spots on my legs and said, "You're seeing somebody for this, right?" And I said, "No." And she sent me off to an allergist who was one step away from the guy, um, who sat me down at that very first appointment that I had with him and said, "This isn't just your skin. You have systemic mastocytosis, I'm almost certain. Um, and you are going to have to learn to advocate for yourself, because in every medical encounter you have, you're going to be the person who knows the most unless you're with an expert. And most doctors are not going to be expert." And he handed me a stack of papers because they had just come out with their first round of papers from a consensus meeting. And he put me in his office and said, "Catch me when you need to ask me what the words are that you don't know." Um, and so I left that very first meeting with a handful of papers and understanding more, and understanding that my world was really going to be changing. Um, and that first doctor who kind of got it, right? That was good luck. But she didn't get it enough to say, "Hey, you should be carrying EpiPens, and jumping into cold water can cause anaphylaxis." Well, I was a lifeguard, right? So there were things there where there could have been a big miss. Um, and I think what I think is remarkable is she asked the questions about the multidisciplinary aspect of it. She asked about my stomach. She asked if I had headaches. She asked about the allergies, but then she didn't think, "Oh, well, if she has stomach aches, I could do something about it," right? She was a dermatologist and she knew skin, and my skin wasn't bothering me that much. I had spots, but they weren't that itchy. And, so I think the things that I see that make it hard, if you've never heard of it, then you don't know to connect, allergies, stomach anaphylaxis, spots on the skin. But even if you do, if you're a professional who only really looks at your piece of something, and you don't step back, then you miss an important piece of this. but I still see myself as relatively lucky. I talked to a patient last week who had spots on her skin at age 3 months. She turned 49 this year and was diagnosed in December. So she spent her entire life with symptoms that have been very, very difficult for her, and nobody could explain why she had them or approach them properly.
Thank you so much, Jessie. Can I ask you before I go to Polina, because I think she will help us in terms of understanding the rest of that journey. You didn't talk at all about the psychological, sort of the
Oh,
emotional impact of this, either
right.
from the beginning or the end. And you are obviously an optimistic person who always
Yeah.
sees, the bright side of things. The cup is really half full. But can you tell us what that is like? And as you say, for this 49-year-old person,
Yeah.
what that is like to live with this condition without any understanding of what it is, or even getting a
Yeah.
diagnosis and now understanding it.
Thank you for reminding me that I skipped that part. I think partly for me, I was oblivious through some of that. I was a little unwell, but I think, as a quite young person, I didn't have the same journey that some people who are older and wiser have when they're kind of reflecting on their experience. And I didn't have a lot of dismissal. So one of the things that happens is that people, when they are dismissed repeatedly, they present with their symptoms and nobody gets it. They start to doubt themselves. So, when we finally get a patient into our community, part of what we do is to say, yeah, this was a real experience. You've been suffering for a long time, and it's okay to say this is terrible. Because this woman who I'm talking about, who has given me permission, by the way, to talk about her. Um, she said, my family didn't really believe that I was sick because the doctors weren't making any sense of it. And so, can you help me help my family to understand what is going on with me so that they can understand that when I ask for my teenagers to be quieter because I'm just overstimulated and my mast cells are really angry, they understand I'm not just being mean, that I have a reason to. So, all of that kind of dismissal and rejection that builds up over time, it's very hard on the patient. It also affects the relationship with physicians, because when they even if they finally arrive at the Paulinas who really know what she's doing, right, they have been dismissed so much that they can be a kind of a difficult patient, right? They're not a patient who just kind of settles and says, yeah, tell me what I should do next. They're going to be frustrated and upset and and emotional about their situation.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to kind of put you on the spot, but I knew you
Yeah.
had some really important words there. Polina, so over to you. And I wonder if you would take us through your journey. I mean, as a clinician who, as Jess says, would be the ideal clinician for somebody who has mastocytosis to be able to see, but you've obviously had to go through a journey yourself in terms of coming to grips with the condition, how to diagnose it, and maybe your own, explorations of there, but also how do you approach it now? And I think one of the things that, as Jess says, you're needing to be not just, providing information about the condition, the care and treatment, but also being a bit of that emotional support if nobody else has been there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Doreen. Yeah, I would say I believe that also for every physician, mastocytosis is really a very challenging disorder. And I can say that even now, when I see patients, so I see mastocytosis patients every week, so I see at least about 15 patients a week. So I would say that I should be convinced, but anyways, there are always new challenges. And maybe from the beginning, my way. So I come also into the field so I have heard about urticaria pigmentosa, what we already have heard from Jess. So something should be something easy, very similar to urticaria. And then And then when I was reading and looking what I need to do for these patients, this is so you have really high expectation as a physician also for yourself, and you try to find the people who can help you. And then I think also from the physician side, it's very it's also could be really very frustrating how to do this, who to talk, and could you imagine from the beginning, maybe as we said, it's a rare disorder, so everything, even what you know from the books, it doesn't give the same level of confidence as when you see the patients every week. And also what Jess said, it's also very important for to get this connection with the patient-physician connection. And then anyways, the patient feels this. So if you even have a perfect knowledge, what I really believe physicians do, so they need also to transfer this level of expertise and to be very confident. What is already also, again, make it a very, I would say, again, challenging thing for a physician. And we also need to know if a physician wants to be in this kind of uncomfortable situation, not to be very, to be very confident in this. And then also for many years, I think we all experienced this, that we also renew a lot. There could be a skin involvement, there could be anaphylaxis, it could be osteoporosis, many, many things. So first, you also need to give all this information to the patient, and also to think that the patient should not be overwhelmed now. And maybe, so how you do this? Again, as Jess said, the patient maybe was looking for the physician for 10 years and now he got you. And then you also, how much responsibilities you have. So usually also you can maybe even share your email with the patient because you understand what they were all going through. And this is again a big pressure on the patient because he will always then face the physicians who would say better, oh, it's mastocytosis, we don't know. Maybe just double check with your physician. So you always keep contact with the patient. And finally, for a long time, we didn't have anything to treat. So we did all this good job from our side. So we educate ourselves, then we educate our patient, we educate other physicians to see the patient. We also try to explain all the things need to be done, bone marrow biopsy. It's really complex. And then what we do, yeah, we don't now have treatment. So I mean, it's super frustrating. So that's, and then I would say the question also what I have heard many times. Yeah, why did we have to do all this and screen all this? It's not the nicest procedures to do for if there is no treatment. And then there is also very difficult to convince other physicians to be involved because it's not so attractive. So I think it's you need, as a mastocytosis physician specialist, really you need to be really tough to continue believing and going and supporting. So this, I would say, was a long journey. So, and I'm happy where we are now, and how we can further improve this.
So thank you very much, Pauline. Before I go to Christian, I would really like to just pick up on some of the things that Pauline is saying, maybe come back to you, Jess, because I mean, she talked about, challenges in getting to the diagnosis, but quite frankly, if you're also saying that, really, I don't have a treatment for you. And I think what most patients want is a cure. And we also, can't do it here. We need to have other, professionals, other cares and supports brought into that scenario. I mean, for you, Jess, how does that, how do we get to, and how do you get to, other, support persons, other professionals that are part of this? Because it is, in fact, a very, not just a complex condition, but a condition that can manifest in many different ways. How do we improve that care integration?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the the question of who's in charge of a patient, right? So if we're thinking about professionals, in other specialties, so there's an allergist, there's a hematologist, there's a dermatologist, there's a gastroenterologist, and an endocrinologist to look at the bones, and all of these things. I think the trick is to find somebody who's interested enough, even if you can't convince them to be, that they're going to be a mastocytosis doctor, that they'll learn enough so that they can be the person that you send your patients to. And then you probably get them back and you're the node if you're the Paulina. But you want to, clinicians need to start developing a small network of people they can trust to, to give them the input. But I do feel like anybody, any of those doctors can be the node, right? Because what you need is somebody who is willing to look at the literature, look at their own experience, and say, okay, so I'm going to do, if I don't have a targeted therapy, I'm going to do a sort of a stepwise approach, and I'm going to slowly work my way through this set of medications that are not all that effective, but can improve quality of life. I'm going to support the patient as they try to figure out what is triggering their symptoms. And I'm going to help them do that because they are the ones who have to do that. That can't be done by the doctor. I mean, the doctor can say, here's some examples, but you got to go home and keep a diary and kind of feel your way through as a patient. And that's where the patient organizations really, I think, can shine in rare disease in general. It's all of the stuff that takes place outside the consulting room that for us is, I would say, well, in the era before targeted therapies, I would say 80% of the improvement that people have is from what they do at home that has nothing to do with their medications. And if they don't know how to even start that, and many doctors don't talk about that aspect of it, that's where learning from other patients comes in. And, it helps to have expert patients. I've been at it for 35 years, but it helps to have other new patients too. And so having that kind of community around people to, share what's working for them is really important in building up that whole set of people who are going to provide the support.
That's amazing. I mean, it really, as you're talking, as Pauline is talking, right, we see clearly. Why the heck don't we have integrated care teams? Why do not, we set up this, right? We need to have. I mean, and as you say, it could be anybody that is the lead, but we need to have an integrated care team. In some really great pediatric hospitals, it happens. You go to some of the really great rare disease centers, it happens. And what they know is, as you say, we need to have a person who's coordinated. Unfortunately, if you don't have that, it's you. And it's your, the one who told you, you're going to know more about this than anybody else, which is kind of good if you can, but not everybody is Jess. And I think that's a challenge as well. So, Christian, let me pivot to you a bit, and then we'll talk a bit about some of the improvements in the levels. And Vincent, I think we're totally blowing it in terms of being able to get to all of these levels, but I think we're covering the topics relatively well. Christian, what difference does it make to you? I'm going to come back to what you were saying before. You said, you worked at big pharma before. And now you've had the experience of working at a small biotech, and Blueprint is coming forth, hopefully with the opportunity to provide some treatments here. What's been the difference for you in terms of being at a small biotech, and do you really have a difference if you get to know the patients?
Yeah, so it's my personal experience, but I have to say that small biotechs like Blueprint Medicines have the opportunity to be very close to the patient experience, because we started when Blueprint started as a company around 2011. The company decided to focus on oncology, focus on specific mutations, and focus on small population with high unmet need. So when you are focused on when you have such a clear focus, you need to be close. You need to to be close to the patient to deeply understand the need. You need to be close to the medical community to really understand what are the gaps, what are the evidence gaps, what's evidence is required. And also because of the size of the company, you have the opportunity to stay laser focused. And I think for me, this is one of the biggest differences. And I have to share that at Blueprint, we have a lot of nice stories because Blueprint, I think, is the Blueprint journey has been very connected to the journey of the communities, the patient communities, the medical communities. And I remember our former CEO when she was sharing like early days when the company was trying to understand the disease, the biology, following the science. The company started with compound that seemed to work in GIST, in intestinal stromal tumors, and then the company found that the same compound at a different doses could also help a disease called advanced systemic mastocytosis. And then when the company started talking with the SM community, we found that there was a spectrum of diseases, not just advanced, that there were other people living with something called indolent systemic mastocytosis, that there was also a huge unmet need. So this journey, I think, reflects the importance of being close to the patient, being focused on the need, and being open to navigate and go with follow the science and develop solutions on the go, and having this flexibility. So for me, this is one of the biggest differences if I compare big pharma with small biotech. That's what really makes me passionate about this experience.
We're going to run out of time, and Vincent's going to turn off all our cameras. So I want us to get to, he wouldn't do that to us, but Paulina, let me kind of pivot to you then, based on what Christian said and what Jess has said. How does a clinician then, and obviously they're working with the experts in the area, and what he's saying is that the more we kind of talk with the patients, the more we begin to understand the range of it. And geez, can our medicines do it? What has it meant for you, seeing this disease come into that whole arena of targeted therapies? How does it make you interact differently, maybe in terms of diagnosis and even in terms of delivering, your support and care for the patients?
Thank you. Yeah, I think during the years we have now invented some of the tools which really help us to look at the patient. So there are specific patient-reported outcome measures, and I find it's very helpful because it gives you sometimes also the numbers. And if we imagine that the patient comes to the clinic and he also wants to share a lot of things. And then you need to structure this information. Sometimes it could be really very challenging. And what we do at Charité, for example, each patient, before he comes to us, he complete this patient-reported outcome measures. So we know already what is with the quality of life, if the disorder are under control or not. So you can even see what symptoms the patient may have, and you know how you need to communicate with the patient.
I don't know if we just lost Paulina's connection. Here, you're back. I think we had a stutter. I think we had a stutter in your feed for a second.
So there you have heard that we had the prompts which the patient complete before they come to us. So then you have a good idea on how the patient feel, what he needs. So you can already prepare yourself for the consultation before the patient comes to you. And I also think that when we also talk about networking,
certainly seem to lose your feet there. But Jess, let me go back to you then. I mean, based on what you're hearing now, how do you think these kinds of developments, both in terms of what Pauline is doing, in terms of much more systematizing the ability to diagnose and to provide information, but also with the advent of potential treatments, how does that change for you, both in terms of what you do as a support person? Because as you say, in these small diseases, the patient support group really becomes really the hub, but also for you, I think your background, you know, what your current profession is in public health. What does it suggest to you in terms of how we can do a better job in terms of awareness and getting people to an accurate diagnosis?
I mean, the good news is that I think when there is a good treatment, doctors pay more attention. So, you know, my experience is we have one target, well, we have two targeted therapies that are approved in the UK for advanced systemic mastocytosis, which we're delighted with. And when I go to the hematology congresses, people pay more attention. They come over to me because there's a big poster behind me that says, we have targeted therapies. And then they think, oh, this isn't, you know, the pain in the neck that it always was. You know, so there is an incentive then and an excitement, and it removes, I think, some of what is so difficult about managing these patients, right? The frustration and how much time it takes because of the nature of the disease, you know, multiple systems involved. People react badly to medication sometimes, you know, in the way things were before because we're hypersensitive. You know, it all takes a lot of fiddling to get somebody on track. And so it makes it much more appealing to be somebody who treats this if there's something you can do that will really transform somebody's life. So that's the good news. The good news is that it should be appealing to clinicians. And I hope that means that we're going to get more interested in indolent as well, assuming that we get the targeted treatments through our HTA process, which we're still waiting for. But I think, you know, I think the problem, the diagnostic problem doesn't go away. And the problem of getting people from the GP onward is, you know, is still there. And I think, you know, I think you use the hook of new treatments as a way to get out the word and say, you know, you used to think this was something you know, that you really couldn't do anything about. And in fact, some of those dermatologists who don't do a great job, in my view, because they sort of stop partway through this diagnostic process, now that they feel like there's something that can be done, I'm hoping that they will do, you know, actually see the value in doing a full workup and bringing more patients along. But it's still really challenging. I mean, I just put in the post some materials to go to the Primary Care Dermatology Society in the UK, you know, to try to get them at their event that they're having coming up to, you know, learn about it and teach their other GP friends. And I still find it a hard nut to crack about how you kind of get your foot in the door with the GPs. But though I do think, you know, technology is going to matter. I know, for example, that there are, you know, some of these companies who have targeted treatments coming have thought through and are trying to make more precise models, AI models that will look at a set of symptoms and say, hey, that's mastocytosis. Now, that works. My sister is a primary care provider in the US, and she has on her electronic health record system a thing that'll pop up on her screen when a particular set of symptoms comes together and says, hey, this could be mastocytosis, and here's the person to contact. We don't have that in the UK yet. I mean, we have a new 10-year NHS plan. Maybe we're going to get something like that. And there are other ways of, you know, of improving the tools that will allow GPs who are generalists, and they're meant to be generalists, right? They're not going to recognize 7,000 rare diseases. So we have to give them the tools. I can't teach every doctor about mastocytosis because that's, you know, it's an impossible task, but we can empower them with tools that make their job easier.
Well, that's a great way to kind of close out the panel. I know that we want to get to the interactive part with the people on the call, but there will be opportunities, hopefully, for each of you to continue to educate even within this next discussion. It's been I think, a great odyssey for us, starting with the diagnosis and kind of what the challenges are, coming back to how treatments and development of treatments can really help to, yeah, certainly make that odyssey not only shorter, but for also for making it so that it actually does get to a more accurate outcome. So I'm going to hand it back over. First of all, just thanks to everybody, and we'll stay on. This has been a brilliant conversation, and I don't know, Vincent. We wanted to start this series, with PEOF, and I don't know that it was a great idea to choose a really difficult rare condition to start with, but I think it was a brilliant way of showing kind of the challenges, but also how do we get to some of that quicker diagnostic odyssey. And I just made a comment as well about AI. This is not the time to explore all the ins and outs of AI, but I think we're all looking at AI as being a real enabler in this case. So thanks a lot, and over back to you, Vincent.
Thank you so much, Doreen, and I couldn't agree more. Thanks to all of you and to the speakers and for the enriching discussion you had just now. I really loved learning about the patient experience with a multisystemic disease and how it relates to challenges and opportunities in patient-provider communications, but also the value it has for innovators to actually bring innovation to meet patient needs. Likewise, I also enjoyed the insight into the challenges that providers face and the multidisciplinary pathways that may be there to actually help providers serve their patients better. So that being said, we have a co-creation session prepared for all of you to share your ideas and your insights in breakout groups. We hope to shine light on the difficulties that patients are facing in rare diseases and in systemic mastocytosis as well, such as pattern recognition or productive or constructive patient-provider communications, and also around the ecosystem that could enable innovation to help patients get to a more timely diagnosis. And then, of course, we hope to co-create potential solutions to the blocking factors that exist. We'll have 3 topics, as you can see on the screen, and sitting experts for all of them. But don't worry, you will be able to actually contribute to all of those topics in each of the rooms that you'll be ending up in. So and then of course we're very curious about your good practices. I didn't want to forget that. So in each group and for each topic, it would be encouraged for all of you to share what you already know. To make this engagement a bit easier and make sure that we're taking note of all the ideas that will come up, we'll use GroupMap as a facilitating tool. And I think my colleague has already posted the link to the GroupMap in the chat. If you click on that, you will have to enter your email to access the GroupMap, and then you'll be able to interact with it by clicking on spaces. You can add notes and write down your thoughts. And we will make sure to share this link again once we're all in breakout groups. So Matt, can I ask you to get us up? We are getting back together for closing out. Sometimes it can be a bit rough closing the breakout groups. I hope no one got cut off too harshly. But I observed a very, very nice conversation and discussion, and I also saw that a lot of ideas were flying into the group map. So it's really encouraging to see that, and I think there's a lot of food for thought and hopefully also food for action that can be leveraged in the long run. So that being said, I just wanted to remind everyone, or actually, I'm happy to give Paulina, Jess, or Christian the floor if you want to say a few words, some reflections from the conversations. Putting you on the spot here.
I can start from it. It's the conversation we had and the richness of the conversation reflects the power of collective learning, right? We talk about AI, we talk about data, we talk about system integration. So, and it's really interesting when you bring different expertise together. The picture you're seeing become more complex and and you start to see more opportunities, and you start to see more specific opportunities to really make minor changes, but can have like a huge impact. So I'm very grateful of this conversation.
Yeah, the same from my side. I'm really happy. We had great discussions, and what I think learned from today, or it's somehow back up a main message in my brain. We need to all to speak the same language because there is everything there. We just need communicate, and there are so many tools sitting out there to do this, and learning also from other communities, from other experiences about rare disorder, not only mastocytosis, to a little bit jump out of the bubble to look at the other disorders as an example, and to learn from this was a great experience.
And I would say, following on that, we see change happening in our community partly because there are companies who are interested, and there's money, and money means more support and more capacity building among the advocates and more money going to our doctors, and that's not going to happen for everybody. And so when you think system-wide, you have to think beyond the opportunities that the buzz creates and think, can we build what we learn into the system so that things get better for the people who are never going to have the treatment and still deserve the care, So that's, we're very grateful to be in the situation that we're in, but we realize that it is unusual.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jess, for this last comment. I really love that. And actually, Doreen, I think that reflects a little bit some of the conversations we had on this topic before. So I'm happy for you to also say a few closing words.
No, I really appreciate as well. Sometimes these breakouts, can be a challenge if people are not willing to speak out. For me, we had the most amazing, engaging, opportunity to really take what is, the panel had said and bring it forth. So it was a great experience, and I think we achieved what we wanted. We had, mastocytosis there as an example, but it was really a kickoff in terms of what the real issues were across so many diseases. So, really thanks again to PEOF for sponsoring this and for bringing people together and for, hosting this kind of interactive conversation.
Thank you so much, Doreen. As a quick reminder for everyone, this was the first of a series of sessions on this specific topic.
Vincent, you're breaking a bit. Do you want me to jump in?
And so we hope you'll be up for diving deeper into how we can. So
I'm gonna mute him. Okay, so this was the first session of a series of 3. We are planning to continue the conversation with you. We may also have more sessions coming up from the rare disease ecosystem. And shall you have any topic that may be interesting for you, or any community that you think could share good case practices, we would love to connect. Our next appointment will be over the summer with a second session that will focus on patient ownership of their journey. So a slight continuation of what we've discussed today. And then we are going to reconvene in October at the occasion of the Rare Disease Month. And there the idea is to really discuss shared decision making and how all the different elements come together for optimal care and better patient outcomes. And perhaps we could move to the next slide. So in the meantime, while we wait for the next PEOF Plus Rare session, we would love to hear your opinion about this. So there is a quick poll that just appeared on your screen, just from 1 to 10, where 10 is the highest. How likely would you suggest a colleague to join the next session? And we have more touch points for you within PEOF. So we also invite you to register for our upcoming co-creation sessions. We have a next webinar, which will also focus on precision medicine. We are going to talk about a specific precision medicine solution within the context of a European IHI project and see what were the learnings there and how can we take those learnings further even than the ecosystem of the project per se. And then we have another session upcoming for which registrations will be open soon that will look more at the connection between patient engagement and investments, and a first platform dedicated to the African community on the 28th of April. So it's going to be a PEOF Plus session. Similarly to this one, we will draw example from the African community to understand how can we strengthen participation and patient engagement in the African region. And also there, we'd love to have different perspectives. So you're invited to join and to invite your network as well. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vincent, for being an amazing host of this meeting also. And thank you to all the speakers. And
Thank you so much.
Dane.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Enjoy the weekend
Bye.
ahead.
Bye.